Welcome to Make a Difference with Phil Martelli. He is Phil Martelli. I am Jared Phillips. Phil, another Mother's Day in the books. A lot of people getting the opportunity to spend some time with their family. Hopefully not catching too much of that Sixers game on Sunday. It was a bit of a rough one there to wrap up the playoffs for both of our squads. But I think it was a good opportunity that would hopefully get to spend some time with family and with friends and whoever else you have in your life that may be give you kind of a motherly influence, if you will.
Well, but you also have to be uplifted, right? It was 6-0 across the street,
There you go.
right?
Yeah, there's positives.
And
Is it 10-13 now?
in the first, I forget that number, but the first inning there were, I believe I heard a stat like 850 feet of home runs. Seems like a lot of. That was deep.
The figure they might be putting the piece together. We can jump on that a little bit more as we
we'll
get there.
We'll get there. But relationships, that's what Mother's Day, Father's Day, celebration of birthdays, relationships. So for everybody out there, real relationships are built on what you know about those that you think you know. So there's a lot that's thrown around about sport, about the family and okay, but my reaction is, let's boil this down. What are the relationships, staff to staff, CEO to the receptionist, physical plant to the transportation department in a high school system? Relationships. All of us need to work on those. And in today's world, it becomes impersonal because you use a machine and you say, I was in communication. I'm connected with that person. Real relationships. Let's work on those. Finding out what we need to know about those that we think we know. And nobody does that better than a mom. So to all the moms out there, happy Mother's Day. And join our movement. Make a difference as a movement going on. We are no longer accepting Mother's Day. We are at least going to get Mother's Week. If not Mother's Month. If not, forget about it. Mothers all year long. Come on, man. Come on. Let's do better than Mother's Day. And let's do better because it comes from Make a Difference.
Spot on. We have a terrific guest who I think might highlight some of those same sentiments coming up here in just a bit, coming off the heels of a wonderful Mother's Day. But before we jump into just one of the just leading voices in college hoops right now, we have to get into that Martelli Minute.
The Martelli Minute. Status Solutions is still engaged with us. Dale Carnegie. Like, think about all these people that just every morning, 6:30, Phil_Martelli, Instagram, you get that little nugget and it lifts you up for that day. And it allows you then to, hey, you know what? I got to apply this to my relationships. The Martelli Minute. All competitions start play between your ears. Athletic, academic, all competitions. Business competitions start play between your ears. Dreams become goals when you know where you need to go and make plans on how to get there. First you know, and then you have to have the how. At the end of the night, look in the mirror, ask yourself this question. Did you give 100%? Show up. The first step towards excellence and success is showing up. Are you living a life worth modeling? Somebody's always watching. Would they want you to be their example? And then for all out there, happy Mother's Day. A mom's love just hits you differently. Always has, always will. Happy Mother's Day. And again, remember, we have a movement. No more Mother's Day, Mother's Week, Mother's Month, Mother's Year. They deserve it. So thank you to all the moms.
And our guest this week would certainly subscribe to that idea.
Well, again, we hit another one, right? The guest segment on Make a Difference. I'm always looking for an angle. You're a great help in trying to find out those people that are making a difference. Yes, in the Philadelphia community, but we wanted to expand this to make sure that we're touching all facets, not just of sport, not just of basketball, but people that are truly making a difference. And we've done it again. Really anxious to have this conversation. Really anxious. Who's it with? A senior writer at CBS Sports. So you think, well, it's a guy, right? It's a guy that, well, college hoops, yes. NBA draft, right? That's on the horizon. But I didn't know this until I looked into it. But the lead columnist for the Olympics. So there's got to be a lot of stories behind that one. He's hoops related in all things, podcast and television appearances. It's amazing at such a young age to be as efficient as he is at all these things. Started with College Hoops Journal, a music aficionado.
I was going to say, we got to mention the music chops because that was one thing that stuck out to me right away.
The music aficionado, national award winner. And you know what? I read it and the national award, and I said, you know what? I'm giving him my own award. He is a top shelf wordsmith. And above all those things, and more important than all those things, Matt Norlander is honorable and he's thought-filled. I cannot tell you any conversation that I've had with him over the past 10 years that hasn't been thought-provoking, not thought-filled where he wants to tell me but it's there's a point in his conversation. Great writer, but an even better conversationalist. And in today's world, that is a trait that everybody should take on. Having the ability to have meaningful conversation. That's why this segment is going to be top shelf. Matt, thank you for joining Make a Difference.
I don't know what to say. I mean, it's all downhill from here. Thank you, Phil. I am honored and humbled to be on the show, but I cannot possibly live up to that introduction. That is quite literally the nicest and most eloquent and compliment adorned introduction I've ever received in my entire life. Thank you.
So I do mean that about a comfortable conversationalist in a world that we've lived in where people do a lot of talking at you, but not talking with you.
Yeah.
And you have a unique ability. Was that learned, or did you study someone that or did that come from home?
I think it's just natural curiosity. I don't know if it was, I mean, to a certain extent it gets learned. I mean, you go through the reps, and I've been fortunate enough to cover college basketball at CBS Sports for close to 16 years now. Next season will be my 17th season covering the sport for CBS Sports. And prior to that, I appreciate the College Hoops Journal shout out. That predated College Hoops Journal was an independent website that I started back I started in 2007 at a time when blogs just were one of the most predominant media availabilities on the internet, and they had their time from like 2004 to like 2012 2013 or so. I started my own, and that helped me get the gig at CBS. And then just getting to know coaches and never being afraid to try and have a conversation and to hopefully respectfully know the boundaries, but get to know these players and these coaches and the athletic directors and the officials and all that, and just allow good intentions and curiosities to lead me down as many pathways as possible. So I guess that's my best answer for your question.
And the writing skill. Can you take it like there's a whole different world than you're much younger than I am, but I grew up reading the newspaper to see the game story, right? Mm-hmm. now the gift that you have for writing, it's really a storytelling. Could you take us through take an example of the story that you wrote at the end with Dusty May? What goes into that process? How long does that take? And people out there that are teachers or students, coaches, whoever is tuning in, how can they improve their gift of writing?
Well, I appreciate you bringing up the Dusty May story. Sometimes some of the most interesting stories are not ones that you plan on doing to begin with. So I will save that for the second half of my answer here. When it comes to writing, and I do enjoy the process. I think having great writers in the sports media space is an extremely important thing. And thankfully, we still have plenty of them out there, but there don't seem to be as many in 2026 as there were in, say, 2006, let alone 1986. And the way that sports is covered, I mean, it's constantly evolving, and it's evolving in lockstep the way that our culture changes and how technology changes and the things that are made available to us and our tools for storytelling. A lot of that changes, and there are ways of doing storytelling in 2026 that were quite literally impossible a decade ago, but can still transform the way that messages are sent and stories are told in a beneficial way, albeit in a different way. But when it particularly comes to writing, to me, writing is, it's one of humankind's oldest hobbies, pastimes, maybe the oldest, to actually tell a story and to do it in a written form. It is a way of conveying so many things in ways that can't be duplicated in any kind of other form, even, orally. When I say orally, I mean literally AURALLY, listening to it, or orally speaking it out verbally as well, or using a visual medium. When you write something and you're able to put in all of that time and that effort, it's sent out. And however long it is, an amazing 790 word story or a 7,000 word story, the people that receive it, how they actually intake it, the way that they read it, is a very intimate experience. Because typically speaking, when you read it, it's a reader and their mind, and they're digesting the words, and it's a very direct communication, right? And I think it's still and always will be a very important way of passing along a variety of different information. You can write stories about a whole bunch of stuff. So as it pertains to the Dusty May one, I'll be specific in particular about this. Um, I've gotten to know Dusty May relatively well over the past 4 years specifically. Like, I did not know, like, when COVID hit in March of 2020, I had never talked to Dusty May in my entire life. Or maybe I'd met him once at a Peach Jam in like 2016. I actually remember being introduced to him by Mike White when he was on Mike White's staff, but it was like a quick hi, hello, and that was it. But Dusty May is among the sharpest coaches in the game. If he I just read off of who he is as a person, if he finds you to be someone that is trustworthy, well-intentioned, he will give you the time of day. And I do appreciate him being that way. And so this past season, I was the president of the United States Basketball Writers Association. And at the end of the year, there is a big banquet. There's an awards dinner that happens. And that dinner has become actually more and more difficult for some people to attend because of the transfer portal. Like, for example, this year and last year, Duke had the National Player of the Year, Cameron Boozer and Cooper Flagg. They did not go to this awards dinner because of a variety of different factors that don't even have to do with the transfer portal. Vanderbilt's women's coach, she was the National Coach of the Year on the women's side. She did not go, presumably because of the transfer portal, and they're actually trying to decide whether or not they're going to move the date of the dinner. But Dusty May told me, I made the call to him. It was the Monday after Selection Sunday. And I know I'm being long-winded, so apologies on this. But I called him as the president. I said, hey, who knows what's going to happen in this NCAA tournament? Side note, they would go on to win the tournament, but they had not yet played a game yet. This is the day after the bracket came out. But I'm thrilled to tell you that you are the National Coach of the Year, the Henry Iba National Coach of the Year on behalf of the United States Basketball Writers Association. And the first two words out of his mouth were, come on. Like, he didn't believe it. I was like, come on, man. You've had a really amazing season, obviously. And he told me on that phone call that no matter what happened, he would be at that awards dinner. And flash forward, they win the national championship. And he, all this busy stuff that and there was even like one about a 24-hour period, guys, where the date might have had to shift because Magic Johnson was the guest of honor. And so basically, because it's Magic Johnson, we had to make sure like he was going to be there. And none of that phased Dusty. Like, he went, he got it done. He was awesome for doing so. But before that dinner happened that night, he landed in St. Louis where the awards dinner was held. He's good friends with Josh Schertz, the coach of St. Louis. And I just happened to spend a few hours with him. And I didn't go to St. Louis intending to write this story. But, and I'll try and wrap this up relatively quickly here. Sorry, I know this is taking a bit.
Oh, no, please.
But I remember when they won the title, and I've got the video on my phone, and Dusty May climbs up the ladder. I actually had interviewed him for CBS Sports HQ on camera. And then I want to say less than 2 minutes later, after that interview was done, he climbed the ladder and he cut the final parts of that net. But I took a video. And that video was all of 13 seconds long. Like Dusty May climbed to the top of the ladder. He cut the net. He looked around. He didn't swing the net. He didn't pump his fist. He didn't scream. Just kind of put up his hand, looked to both sides of the court where the Michigan fans were still in the stands, gave a quick thank you, climbed back down, and then there was a net to cut on the other side of the floor, and there were more on-court interviews that he did. And I remember in that moment thinking, like, man, like he wasn't as expressive as I thought he would be. You know, this is a guy who was cutting the nets down in the state of Indiana. He grew up an hour away from this place. He was a manager for Bob Knight. He didn't play Division I basketball, didn't play Division II, Division III, didn't do any of that. I remember him telling me in a previous conversation, my dream, like if you would have found me at 23 years old, my dream would have been to been a varsity high school coach in the state of Indiana. Like I would have had it made if I could somehow get to that level, right? And here he is in that state, cutting down a national championship net. And I thought, it's just a bit muted. So with that in my mind, we got to talking on a bunch of different other stuff. And then I asked how it had been over the past few days. Cause I knew that I knew a lot of the interviews that he had done. I was like, has it soaking in? You know, what does it feel like? And then that's when he kind of just let me know. And we were on the record here. It would have been understandable if he wanted to keep this off the record. But again, good stories can only be told with people willing to say things on the record. And he essentially told me when I got to the top of that ladder, like I had heard that it feels like if it's not what you think it's going to be. And he was like, it was worse than that. It was less than it. It was nothing. I didn't feel anything. And some of that's part of like the journey is better than the destination. And I think that's kind of unavoidable in all of American sports. But then we just got to talking about the unavoidable reality of being a head coach and on a coaching staff in 2026 in Division I men's college basketball. And no one's breaking out the violins for Michigan. But there is something fundamentally off about the sport, about the situation where if you win a national title, you can't even feel like in the hours and the days that come after this, that you actually achieve something. It doesn't feel like it because why? Because even as they did that and they got their brief, they got interviewed on television by Ernie Johnson, and they built a stage on the court and they got the banner and the confetti and all of that. And yes, there's happiness there. Like there's joy and there's hugs, but there's not some huge cathartic emotional payoff. And why is that? Because as one shining moment played and the entire team was on the court, the clock struck midnight on the East Coast. The transfer portal opened, and quite literally, as they were in the locker room, the coaches, and they had their own little side locker room. Phil knows what I'm talking about. The players have their own locker room. They had to decide, hey, we've got a Zoom call here with a player, and it's a highly rated player at 2 a.m. Eastern, scheduled for back at the hotel. Like, guys, should we do this? Should we do the Zoom call? They opted out of it. But even just all of that connected to it made for a very compelling story. And I have heard from a lot of coaches that read it, and some things are going to be unavoidable, Phil, in terms of the chase and what the job is. And that's why Dusty May's being paid handsomely, right? But to the general central point of your question, good stories are there waiting to be told. But it's as much on the writer to put the time and effort. Like I cared about that story. I didn't want to. It's an easy trap for writers to get caught into this of, okay, let me just get this down on the page, get it done, and get on to the next one. And I understand that, but you gotta want to care about the subject and put the time in, because I want that Dusty May story to be something that matters and people look back on, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Hopefully the situation in college basketball is different in 2036 than it was in 2026. And you also need the subjects willing to share with you and trust in you. And so that's a lot of what went into that particular story.
We're going to mark this because there was that segment there about winning a national championship. and climbing a ladder. And this isn't an indictment of Dusty May or his staff. The fact that they met, if I remember this correctly, Matt, in the story, they celebrated till about 4 a.m. They had a staff meeting at 7 a.m. to decide on this transfer portal. I'm not disparaging Dusty May and his staff, but it's wrong because there are coaches that stayed home from the celebration of our sport is our convention and the Final Four. People stayed home to be ready for midnight on Monday night. Somebody out there has to hear. It's sad. That's sad, right? I'm sure there are other descriptive words you could use for that, but he wouldn't have been the only coach that would have gone up there and felt that way, right, Matt?
Yeah. No, listen, and listen, Dusty May and Michigan, they were the envy of the sport by getting to win the national title. Anyone would have traded places with them, but you shouldn't need to want to trade places with a coaching staff that just didn't feel like it could bask in the entire moment. And one of his assistants, Akeem Miskadeen, who will be a head coach in the not too distant future, he gave me the kicker quote where he went to the Portsmouth Invitational, which for those listening or watching may not be familiar with. It's where all these college seniors go every year. Pre-draft camp, and it's a very important like annual thing. And so Akeem goes to support Namari Burnett, who was on Michigan's roster and was a senior, and he's there. And I talked to him, I guess, the next day, and he's like, "Yeah, people coming up to me and they're like, 'Hey, champ, what's up, champ?' And he's like, 'Maybe I'll feel like a champion when our roster for next season is done.'" That should not be the case.
No.
That should not be the case. But that's the way that the sport is
cycle.
It's the cycle and how you get wired with all that. So some of it's unavoidable. I get all that. And as time does its thing, like, I don't know if it's happened now or if it'll happen in the middle of June or happen in the middle of August. Like, they're going to feel the fulfillment of having won. I just thought after talking to Dusty May, quite literally 1 week removed, we talked on that Monday after the Monday prior, they won the national championship. And he was saying what he was saying to me. And it was just like, he was just another coach, just doing another thing, recruiting another player. And I'm like, huh.
Not that.
And some people brought up the fact that Dean Smith famously, and I think this got reported out months later in Sports Illustrated, they won the 93 title. And the next day, he was in Rasheed Wallace's kitchen.
He was in Philadelphia. I was going to say that to you.
Recruiting him.
That's not folklore.
Right. And so Rasheed Wallace was like,
yes,
Coach, I appreciate this, but you just won the title. What? And I'm severely paraphrasing, but like, what the hell are you doing here? I just saw you win on national television last night. Now, folks, Rasheed Wallace was an insanely highly rated recruit, and so that's why Dean Smith did it. So to a certain extent, this is always going to be there. I get that. I think the sport and American sports culture maybe needs to take a little bit more care in allowing our champions to bask in that more than they do. But that maybe it's just a college sports specific thing. Nick Saban was famously miserable making to the title game because many couldn't recruit. So some of this stuff is unavoidable, but Dusty May shined a light and helped me shine a light in 2026 on what it means to win a national championship and the rewards or lack thereof that comes with doing that.
No question. I know that when the podcast thing burst onto the scene, I guess but your preparation for your podcast is somewhat legendary, Matt. So take us through that. How do you prepare for your podcast with Gary?
Well, it's definitely not legendary. I appreciate you trying to prop me up there, but I will say for anyone that is taking in this show, whenever you're finding it, I don't just turn on the camera. I've got the same exact Rodecaster as Jared there, by the way. It's a classic podcasting tool. I'd love to see that. And turn on the microphone and go. There's a lot of prep that goes into it. You got to strike the balance for what we do with our college basketball podcast. Like, we strike the balance between just knowing the content we're going to talk about, but also allowing for some real improv and going off the rails. And that's part of the shows. Honestly, that's just part of what we do and what listeners and longtime viewers and people that have taken in the show for well over a decade at this point. But yeah, it's just, you want to be well prepared. In my opinion, just in the podcast space in sports, you listen to 2 or 3 of these and you can tell pretty quickly who is just shooting from the hip and who is actually like prepared. And different shows can have different objectives. I'm not going to make judgments on that. But for me personally, and for GP as well, like we do like to be armed with more information than not. And then what will inevitably happen is, half the stuff we prep for doesn't even come up on the show. But that's fine. I'd rather have that than not. And it's an important part. I can see that notepad with Phil right now. Like he came prepared. I'm not surprised whatsoever. It's the mind of a coach. I fully expected that to be the case anyway. But yes, the Ion College Basketball Podcast has become known for, I hope, as much interesting dialogue as frankly some of the ridiculousness that comes up on that show. That unless you have listened for a long time, like we've got some inside jokes and references that are quite literally like 10, 12 years old at this point, where if you're not in the know with the lore of the show, you just gotta kind of go along for the ride.
All right, because I don't know, and I know we have had conversation.
Yes.
I have to bring up the topic of the week, and I don't know where you fall, but I'm going to lay the word out there, and you take it where you want. Expansion.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I have been this way from the start, and I will try and be quick on this. But in setting up my answer, I have noticed since expansion. So we're taping here on Monday, May 11th. Expansion news became official last Thursday, and particularly like on Friday, more than any other day, maybe a little bit of Saturday, I saw a lot of the reaction to the news focused on the size of the tournament field, the additional at-large bids, bumping down the mid-majors, the seed line as a result of all that, and that's certainly one reason why I'm against it. But I've been surprised at the lack of discussion around my biggest issue with tournament expansion, and that's the regular season. My biggest issue is that I love college basketball. I want the regular season to matter as much as possible. And when you reduce the standard for what it takes to get into the tournament and expand it by 8 more bids, you quite literally water down not just the tournament, but the meaningfulness of the regular season and the games that are attached to it to do so. So my issue is that for the past however many decades, 4 decades, essentially, since we've gone to 64 teams, college basketball and its popularity in the regular season has waned. Like in 1988, it was way more popular than it was in 2018 at the end of February. I get all that, but it still mattered a lot. And it mattered a lot because the teams that would populate that cut line, the teams that, as we flip the calendar from the last day of February to the first day of March, and we had another 11, 12, 13, 14 days till we got to the selection Sunday and knowing the NCAA tournament field, the teams that were projected into the 9 seed range and the 10 seed range and the 11 seed range, those teams at the same time had resumes that were good enough to suggest they were good to be in the tournament and win a game or two. They probably had defeated teams along those lines that showed that they were capable of beating at least an NCAA tournament level team once or twice. At least, generally speaking, there are always exceptions. So you had that tension to it, but with the regular season, the conference tournaments, you had this beautiful blend of teams that were dancing on a razor's edge, and you could make the case for them to be in or to be out. And then there's the conference tournament play and all the pressure that comes with that. Well, that's all going to go away.
Yes.
Because you're adding 8 more bids. And so now, just as an example, NC State. All right, I'm going to pick on them right now. I'm bringing up their resume. They entered the NCAA tournament at 20-13. They had lost 6 of their final 8 games of the season. They barely got in. In a 76-team field, there is no drama whatsoever. They are in as a 20-13 team. They're in comfortably, oh, by the way, because, again, they qualified for a 68-team tournament, which means there would have been another 8 or 9 teams after them that still got in that had worse resumes. And while I understand that people say there's always going to be one team, there's always going to be a first 4 left out, there's going to be people on the wrong side of the bubble.
Nope.
I don't think I think some people have, but I don't think a portion of the American sports public and some of the commentators out there have really understood just how uninspiring the resumes are going to be for the teams that barely get in. And I am not talking about, because I know my audience here, I know who I'm talking to. I'm not talking about the third place team in the Atlantic 10 or the fourth place team in the Atlantic 10.
No,
I even think that's a different conversation altogether because of the limited opportunities the teams from those schools have. Talking about the Power 5 conferences and the teams that are under 500 in those leagues that are going to regularly. It used to be like a borderline scarlet letter to get into the tournament with like 13 or more losses. That is going to be part of the tournament moving forward. And so because of that, you reduce the impact and urgency of the regular season. You are giving the average sports consumer more reason to care less about the college basketball regular season. That's my biggest issue with it, more than even the size of the field.
so I have to take this. On January the 10th, VCU lost at George Mason. They were 12-6 on that day. And I was driving home to Philadelphia, and I started to get a knot in my stomach, and I'm saying to myself, they just went on the bubble on January the 10th. Every game here forward is a bubble game for them. And to call it the way it is, the NIT is not what VCU is built for. So I got a knot every game going forward. Now they win 17 of 19, right? But there was a joy in that bubble watch. They've eliminated any real discussion of bubbles. So now that last month of the season where you're checking scores, and I'm using myself personally, you're checking scores from the Mountain West because that impacts an Atlantic 10 team. It's gone. It's gone. There's a second thing that hasn't been, Matt, in my view, and I'm sure there's so many layers to this. The 5 seed or the 6 seed that is waiting for a team for a playing game on Tuesday to prepare to play them on Thursday is now at a disadvantage.
Yep.
5 and a 6 seed, instead of having Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to prepare for an opponent, you now have, let's say it's 24 hours. It's not, because you have media obligations, you have a public practice. This is the most important game of the year for a 5 and a 6 because they're always vulnerable. But we're talking about the top 20 teams in the country not knowing their opponent till a day before. In the biggest event, the biggest celebration of college basketball. It sounds nuts, but a 5 and a 6 seed are going to be disadvantaged in their preparation because we want to play in Dayton at 4:30 on a Tuesday.
Yeah. And as we talked about on the phone after your son got into the tournament, not just got in, but got a win. And I've talked to other coaches about this as well. In fact, I talked with Ryan Odom about it a little more than a week ago. Part of the experience of just getting the tournament is like seeing your name flash on CBS at 6:13 on that selection Sunday. And then it is you kind of like gleefully live in the chaos of however long it takes to get to that first round game. I remember you told me like you like it to last all the way to Friday. You get that extra day because you want to like feel like you're in the tournament. And unfortunately, now with this new model where there being 24, how about this? 32% of the field next year, next March, when we get the bracket on Selection Sunday, 76 team field, 32% of that bracket will not be in the first round. 32%, 24 out of the 76 teams. You whittle 24 down to 12 with 12 games. 52 plus 12 equals 64. And then the first round will start as usual, and everyone will be all in on board on that. But there's going to be 12 teams that play on Tuesday and Wednesday that don't get to experience the tournament in the way that it should be experienced. And 6 of those teams will be automatic qualifiers that won their conference tournaments. That's really, really unfortunate, but that is the model the NCAA decided on. And so we are stripping parts of this thing that made it essentially perfect for a long time, all in the interest of appeasing the power conferences. I've written about it plenty at CBSSports.com. You can read that there. So It is. I will just say, Phil and Jared, it is rare, in my opinion, for something in the sports world to be done so clearly in the face of widespread opposition. I'm not going to say everyone doesn't like expansion, because that's not true. There, among sports fans, there's probably going to be about 10 to 15% that are like, you know what, that's cool. Like, I'll take a few more March Madness games, Tuesday, Wednesday. Yeah, why not? Just toss them on there. But overwhelming sentiment was against this, and the NCAA chose to do it anyway. You just don't typically see this, particularly from an institution like the NCAA, the organization, where it could use all the PR wins it could possibly get.
Amen.
And here, it couldn't avoid it all the same.
Amen.
Matt, correct me if I'm wrong here. This might have been speculative, but I think the bracket that I saw mostly pitted all of these play-ins double-digit seeds and above. So rather than say the 12th team from the SEC taking on the 11th team from the ACC, we're getting the Mountain West winner versus the MAC winner on Tuesday. Like,
no. So what will happen here? I can be quick on this. In the first four that we just had, it was always 2 16 seeds playing against each other, and then 2 at-larges from whatever conferences that came in, however that broke down. Moving forward, it will be 6 and 6. So the 6 games from the automatic qualifiers, that would be your 16 seeds. Every single 16 seed now will need to beat another 16 before they face a 1. And then 2 games will have 15 seeds versus 15 seeds. So that's 6. That's half the field. The other half will be at larges. It cannot and will not be any team that won their automatic bid in their conference tournament. These are going to be teams that have really bad resumes, but they're on the bubble nonetheless, and then they're going to barely get in, and they're going to be every single 5-12 game, every single 12 seed, no matter what that conference they come from, will be an at-large. And then this is really getting into the weeds, but the committee will rank 1 to 76 in order. And depending on the team quality of the best mid-majors and the team quality of those final few at-larges, those other 2 games will either be for 11 seeds, or in some rare cases, you could actually see, it would need to be a perfect confluence of events. You could actually see the final 2 at-large teams playing on the 13 line to play a 4, which is wild to think about, but it is still statistically possible.
Wow. Matt, you have so well-rounded. How do you balance husband, father, and then top of your profession in terms of, you served as the president of the basketball writers, you cover all of these major events. How's that? How do you balance that?
Well, it's hard. Sometimes you can't. I honestly, like, the most direct way I can answer that question is I do a lot of work after my kids go to bed, and my wife is not a night owl. So while we can spend time together, and particularly during the season, like, sometimes she just knows, like, I'm talking to you from my office here. So I got a couple TVs up here, couch, got my drum set over there, got some guitars, watch the games, do a lot of, make a lot of phone calls. And sometimes, like, I will do a lot of work, when my kids are at school, or 9 p.m. to midnight. So that's how I get a lot of stuff done. Like, it's the off season, but it's still busy. And even on this Monday, like, I'm just working on nothing too crazy, but I'm working on another story right now, just like a kind of a newsy, scoopsy kind of story. I will work on that later tonight, after my kids go down. So hopefully we'll be ready for whenever it can be published, be it tomorrow, Wednesday, or whatever. So it can definitely sometimes be challenging as my kids are getting older. I have a 4th grader and a 2nd grader. They're now starting to get into a little more sports here and there, which is great, but it can be definitely difficult. I'd be lying if I said otherwise. Typically, if you want to be able to invest yourself in covering the sport and in a way that really does justice to doing it the way that I would like to do it, like, you got to make sacrifices here and there. But I also, like, off season, on the weekends, never, it's not that I never do work, but I'm able to at least peel away from that and do all that. But November to the 2nd week of April, like, it's a lot for sure. And on some level, like, I know coaches can identify with that as well. I fortunately don't have to travel as much as coaches, but nonetheless, yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. But it is a lucky gig to have. I love the job that I have, and fortunately, a very supportive and amazing, incredible wife who she likes sports. Basketball is not her game whatsoever. So that's the other benefit, where, like, if I got to watch hoops, like, I'll just go to a different room in the house. She's like, do what you got to do. It's fine. I'll watch what I got to watch. So as is always the case. And I know, you know this, Phil, having a wife that really understands, that if you love what you do, that's a really important thing. But not as much as I love her.
There you go. Mac, take us all the way back. So basketball became this passion. Was there a player, a coach, a game that you said this is it? That has to be this. It's not going to be baseball. It's not going to be football, or not. Why? What was that moment that said this is the way I'm going to live life?
So a couple answers to that question. My parents were both born and raised in Chicago, so I was appropriately brainwashed. The only sports team that I'm truly like still outright emotionally invested in, like no matter what, is the Chicago Bears. Walter Payton was my first favorite athlete, but I still root for the Cubs. My Bulls, but I was a huge Bulls fan. Michael Jordan was the person who made me love basketball. What do you want from me? I was a Chicago sports fan. And, I still remember my parents letting me stay up to watch them win the first finals over the Lakers in 91. So that really bred a lot of my love for basketball. It wasn't just that, but that was a huge, huge part of it. But I've always loved football as well. So Jordan and the Bulls are the first answer to that question. Now, after I got out of college, I knew I wanted to write about sports. And at that time, we're talking, mid 2000s at this point. So like Twitter didn't exist. Social media didn't really exist. Facebook technically existed, but not in the way that we know it and see it now and all that stuff. So if you wanted to be in sports media, writing was really going to be the thing, unless you particularly went into broadcast and you want to do stuff on cam, but that wasn't my goal then. And my two favorite sports have always been the NFL and college basketball. And I've said this plenty of times over the years, but I made a very conscious decision to cover college basketball instead of the NFL for two reasons. One, I always wanted to maintain my Chicago Bears fandom and not have any, I didn't want to have to stuff that down in a box. I just wanted to always be able to root for my favorite sports team and just kind of have a sport that I could always just kind of be a fan of. So that was one. But even more importantly than that, I equate it to guitarists and drummers. For every one drummer, there got to be 50 guitar players out there, if not more. For every one person that would choose to cover college basketball, there'd be 50 that would want to cover the NFL because it's a more popular sport. And so I love them equally. And so I made the calculation of I just feel like the pathway to covering college basketball is going to be easier to navigate than having to go up against so many people that want to cover the NFL. And so that's why I did that. And I didn't know it at the time when I made that decision, but I'm also glad I made that decision, in that college basketball media and college basketball coaches, while there's definitely there can be an adversarial nature to some of it at some points, and there should be. That's a very important part of this. In fact, sometimes I think media can get sometimes too chummy with coaches. It's important to have a line of delineation there. There's still a very good working relationship. Coaches make themselves at the college basketball level readily available, generally speaking, for the most part, with media. I don't think there's a major American team sport where that's more the case than in men's college basketball. And so that's been another big benefit as well. It's helped, the storytelling over the years, getting to know so many coaches in so many different ways. That's really helpful. I talked to John Calipari on the phone less than a week ago about, coaches that were still opposed to NCAA tournament expansion. And if you would have told me, 15 years ago that I'd ever have a phone conversation with John Calipari, he felt like too big of a coach. I say this, objective, with too big of an ego, with too many people attached to him, that I'd never be able to talk to someone like John Calipari on the phone for 15 minutes about something. But, you spend enough time in this industry and you try and do it the right way. And given the nature of the business, it's a really big benefit for college basketball. It speaks on behalf of the institution overall, that it has coaches that are willing to do that. And Phil is obviously now retired, but is a prime example of that, and was for so many years at St. Joe's.
So I have to share this with you. Before we coached our first game at Michigan, we went on a retreat to Chicago, and we had a boardroom and we did all these different things. And we had, I can't believe this. It just popped out of my head. Oh, John Gordon. John Gordon, I'm being small and describing him as a life coach. He's much huger than he's a monster. He's dear friends with Juwan Howard because he was very influential with Pat Riley and the Miami Heat. And one of the days Matt, we went to training camp, or the Bears were preparing for a game. We went to practice, and while we were at practice, Jared is a monster Eagles fan here, and so we're at practice, and Matt Nagy was the coach of the Bears. Well, he came over, acknowledged Juwan and all this other stuff, and then came to me because he had been with the Eagles. And like as soon as it connected, I was like, yeah, man, that was unbelievable what you did at Delaware, won the national championship at Delaware. They were like blown away because the next guy over was the legendary Jim Johnson, who was the defensive coordinator. And all he wanted to talk about was college basketball in Philadelphia. And Juwan and Howard Isley and Sadi are looking at me going like, coach, like, you know, a lot of people, but so, yeah, but I don't know these guys other than the Philadelphia thing.
Yeah.
But I was fascinated with the practice and we sat with the staff and how do you organize? And so I could see that NFL connection for you and I appreciate your fandom. So Matt, you on your headstone.
Oh boy.
One article.
Wow, so heavy.
What's on your headstone? What's the article that you say, you know what? That's going with me.
I hope I haven't written it yet.
Okay.
One that got a lot of attention. This is more than a decade ago now. There's been a few, but Andrew Smith, who has since unfortunately passed, he played for the Brad Stevens teams that made the title games. He had leukemia. He had beaten it the first time, and so and the story about how he did, like he collapsed. He was working. He wasn't even in basketball at that point. Was at like this office job, and like he collapsed. He was unconscious for a long time. They saved him. They revived him. The amount of time that he was unconscious, like, should have turned him into a vegetable, but he was still like he returned to life and was, you know, relatively normal. They thought it was miraculous. So I wrote about all of that after he had defeated that, and then in the years after, cancer came back and unfortunately it took his life, which was really, really sad and tragic. Him and his then wife Samantha received the most courageous award on behalf of the United States Basketball Writers Association at a Final Four one year, and I presented them with that award, and it was a high honor of my career. That one was heavy story, long story, but you have to have the subjects that are willing to trust you. You know, I've never had to do this, so I don't know what it feels like to open myself up to a writer and then tell them a bunch of stuff and then trust that the way that I am telling it will be the way that I am, you know, comfortable with it being depicted and written about and factually accurate. I am like probably to an anal level, like a fact checker. I ask weird follow-up questions because I don't want to have anything. I don't want someone to pick up a story and be like, that was all right. Oh, except that one sentence. No, I don't want the except that one sentence. I want everything to be accurate. And it's a high bar to try and clear. But anyway, to your question, it was called A Bulldog's Battle. And I want to say that published in 2016, I think. If not 2016, maybe 2017. So that would be one of them. But I hope my best one is yet to be written. That is my goal.
So where we sit in my home in Media, Pennsylvania, and I'm looking out a window towards a high school. It's maybe 3 miles away, but it's in that direction. The high school coach in this area has been coaching and teaching and has had leukemia for the last 5, 6, 7 years, and is the dearest of dear friends. He worked with me at St. Joe's, and he went on a path. He wanted to coach high school. He teaches and coaches. And just last week, he was approached about doing a bigger story for the Philadelphia newspapers. And he called me and said, should I? I said, you don't know how many people you will impact by doing it. Do it. I've never told him anything, what to do with his career or any coach's team or get married or anything like that. But that strikes me, and I'm going to share that with him. You've been on this path. you're on this path, and what's on your horizon? What do you see out there? What is it that you're that not the ultimate goal, but like what's the next stopping point for you?
Um, I won't be so grand about it. I hope to cover 1 or 2 World Cup games this summer. I just want to be able to say I got to cover like I care about just like I think little things here and there. Like I want to say I got to cover a World Cup. You know, who knows the next time the World Cup will come to the United States in my lifetime. It moves all around, obviously. So I'm not going to cover like the title game or anything like that, but I want to cover a couple of them. So do that. I hope to cover the Masters next year. Never gotten to do that, but that's in the plans. Hopefully, still gotta get to that point and make sure all is doable there. But you go right from the Final Four to the Masters if you do that.
Yes.
That's a long work trip. I'm debating bringing my wife and kids. They've never gone to a Final Four. It's in Detroit next year. Maybe just get them to come for like 3 days so I get to see them in the midst of all of that. And then if I'm going to be away from the house for like 13 days in a row. Olympics in 2028 in Los Angeles. Going to cover. I never covered an Olympics in person. I've done like feature work in the lead up to Olympics, and I've done reactive columns and stuff like that since I got to CBS and done a bunch of that. But Olympics is, that's at the top of my list. So that's, we are a little more than 2 years away from LA hosting the Summer Games there. Super excited about that. And then other than just like, non-basketball stuff to cover, just trying to continue to do the best I can. Just trying to continue to cover this sport that is ever changing, ever evolving, and we'll see what comes of it. But I'm love the gig that I have, and I don't know, maybe write a book one day. But the subject is to be determined, and I gotta really think about what that I would like. I honestly, if I would like to write about music before I wrote about sports in a book capacity. So I don't know what that would be, but we'll see.
Well, the PGA is about 10 miles from here, wouldn't you say? Aronimink is about
Yeah.
10 miles from here.
Starting this weekend.
But they're at the practice sessions today. They're reporting about the traffic and every other thing and merchandise. I'm going to be out of town, but one of our cohorts here is in college basketball. Brendan Quinn is coming into Philadelphia
Yeah.
so we're going to run him through a stop at Cobb's Creek, which they are renovating as a golf course, all triggered by Tiger Woods Foundation. So I know he's going down there Friday morning, but
I'd like to hear that, and I look forward to Brendan Quinn getting back more on the college hoops beat next season. I think he took a little bit of a leave this past season, and the sport needs his coverage more and more. So you and I both know that. Yes. Hopefully he's back in the mix heavily next season.
Greatly appreciate your time. We always end this segment with this one because it is make a difference. Who's made a difference in your life, Matt?
Oh, I like the way this ends. A lot of people for sure. I will go with an easy answer that is true nonetheless, and the timing of it in particular. Why I will say my mother. We are a day removed from Mother's Day. I got to tell her I loved her yesterday on the phone. She actually specifically requested. She lives about 45 minutes away from me, but I had seen her the 3 previous weekends after not having seen her since Christmas because the season was that crazy. I saw her 3 consecutive weekends in a row, her and my father. So she was like, "Nope, you're going to hang out with your wife and your children on Mother's Day. You don't need to see me. That is my demand, not my ask." But we did get to talk on the phone. I am as much of a sports fan as I am because of my mom. My dad's a sports fan too, but my mom's a bigger one. She's the one who actually wired me to be this way, and always very encouraging. I've had a lot of people that have made a difference on me, obviously, and I love the podcast title and the general vibe of your show here, Phil and Jared. But my mom in particular was a very, very important and ever present influence in my life and just supporting me to do this. And so, yeah, she's at the top of the list. I'm sure you've had that question, that answer on that question before, but
that was going to be my next statement to Jared. He usually keeps track and he'll tell me, I think that's
moms have run it up.
Yeah.
I mean, 40 that my official answer is my mom. It might have been if we had done this in the middle of August, I might have still given you my mom, but in particular, because, she's at front of mind here, one day removed. from
Yeah,
Mother's Day, I would say she's got to be at the top of the list. If I was going to go for a non-mom one that's like really made a difference, I mean, a lot of people for sure. Um, I've got an old college friend. Her name is Shaz Day, who's still great friends with me and my wife. She lives in New York. Former editor at the Village Voice, and now works in New York City at one of the universities there. But just an incredibly talented writer and editor, and just like encouraged me. Like I started college as a theater major, but I was never going to like go through with it. I wanted to do it, get it out of my system. I love doing theater, but I then transitioned to be a journalism major. And so when, long before I ever, left college, she always encouraged me as well. So I just figured I'd give her a good shout as well. And she's still, I still every so often, if I got a particularly big story, before I send it to my big editors, I send it to her because she is the sharpest editor that I know. And so it's good to have people like that in your life who are always like there to support you, but always there to like, make sure things are in line for you. So I'd give her a shout too.
Matt, I thank you. You've made Make a Difference better. And for that, I appreciate you. But even more so, I appreciate you for your friendship and your willingness to engage in any number of conversations that we've had. I just honestly believe that you are one of the most honorable people in the profession because you are thought filled and that you're not a mimic. So thank you.
My pleasure being on the show. And I'm sorry that I was so long winded, but 50 plus minutes. I appreciate both of you. And all I can say is go Bears.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks so much for joining us.
There you go. How about that?
I think I could have probably guessed where that was going with that final question. I mean, that kind of gave him a bit of an alley oop there that he
Very
streamed through.
appropriate.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Time of the year and can you feel though the passion for the game?
Oh, through the roof. I mean,
and for the people, not just the game, but for the people in the game, which are more important.
And just you can tell, like you mentioned, just very thought-filled, thought-provoking. I mean, everything he had to say about the game, it goes so beyond the surface level of what people are seeing right now. I mean, the Dusty May story in particular is pretty terrific, and I thought it was kind of funny that he was like in awe of the fact that he's like, I never thought I'd get 15 minutes on the phone with John Calipari, and all I'm thinking of is, I can't believe you only held him to 15 minutes.
We didn't even tell him that Cal was an original podcast Make a Difference guest.
Oh yeah, one of the OGs. Yeah,
and it wasn't a 15 minutes.
Oh no, it's probably flip those numbers around. That's about where we landed with him.
But thanks to Matt, and I love his connection with coaches. It's real, it's genuine, and he's not out there trying to gotcha. Nor should anybody be out there because they're studying from Coach's Corner. So Coach's Corner again, teachers, coaches, parents, CEOs, business leaders. Coach's Corner, I have a series of questions. I'm going to put the we in there, and then I'm going to come back to that question. So when you gather everybody, have you listed what worked? You just came off a season, just came off a quarter, whatever it would be, a marking period. Have you listed what worked and why it worked? Then you take it to the next level. What can we do better? Open up the sky. There's no pressure. Don't feel pressure now. You're trying to be better at your next opportunity. And what can we do differently? Maybe in coaching, you're going to scout differently, or maybe you're going to run an inbounds play differently. Whatever it would be, now's the time of the year to decompress, but to never let the game or the opportunities that it will present to get better. So you ask those questions using we. Now I want to go back. So we say, how have we listed what worked? Have you listed what worked for you personally, for a member of the team? What can I do better? And then what can I do differently? And then answering all those questions. You have it all in a whiteboard. You have it on sheet. You write it down. It's all over your offices. Now, the question that has to be asked is, what actions can you put in place to move forward? So words to actions, but always the visual to give you a chance to just be a better coach, to be a better leader, to be a better teacher, to be a better parent, be a better person. That's the coaching corner.
I think the challenge that comes with that is when you hit that off season, everybody's got to be everywhere all the time. How do you find the time to just to get people together to do that proper reflection, right?
Exactly what you just said, though. You have to make it. Like you don't, it's not find it like it's lost. It's yes, Wednesday, 4:00. And you put it on people's calendar out of respect for all the things they have going on. But once it's on there, then you have to follow through. Unless there's some kind of medical or family emergency, follow through, because we've talked about it before. Being organized. No one wants to follow someone who doesn't know where they're going. So if you don't take the time to know this, you're at jeopardy of always not knowing where you're going. And that never happens.
I was going to say, speaking of where you're going and putting things on people's calendars, quite a bit on the docket these days.
Last week, I had a chance to sit on a call with about 75 basketball aficionados throughout the country, put together by Richard Kent, a dear friend in Connecticut. And it was a tribute, 10 years since Howard Garfinkel, the originator really of recruiting in college basketball with the 5-star camps. He passed away 10 years ago. And there was a tribute led by Mike Krzyzewski, many coaches throughout the country, many dignitaries in basketball. 70 of us got an invitation to sit in on that hour-long Zoom, and it was fascinating. And then equally as fascinating, I got an invitation to go to the Lansdowne Theater, the newly renovated Lansdowne Theater in the heart of Lansdowne, PA, and walk through their theater and hear about their plans for going forward, for further renovation, naming rights on the building. And to think that this is a place that I pass by twice a day on my way to grade school, and then to be inside and to see what they've done was a terrific opportunity. Then, according to the theme with this Make a Difference, Mother's Day, was able to spend time with the grandmother in Judy Martelli and Elizabeth Martelli, mom of 4. I reach out to Julie and to Megan. So Mother's Day was terrific. Speaking with Devon Prep, their senior athletes and their families, I always enjoy that. The end of the year is such an uplifting time. So having had a chance to do that. And then, believe it or not, a little bit of a slowdown on where I will go.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, there's actually a word on here that vacation.
Vacation.
Like literal vacation, which we'll see how that works out. But I am leaving the area for a little bit. But before I do, The Athletic, the online sports page now, Brendan Quinn and 3 of his cohorts are coming into the Philadelphia area for the PGA Golf. And they're going to play Lanark Country Club. I'm going to stop over and see them for dinner. They'll have beverages. I don't partake, but we'll have a chance to visit with them. And then the Philadelphia Players Academy, August 15th to 19th, it's really starting to flesh out. And remember, this will have skills and drills and competition and summer reading and summer note-taking in Stroudsburg, PA, Pocono Invitational, an overnight basketball academy. Looking forward to taking our umbrella and spreading it out and keeping a close eye on the baseball team.
That's right.
While others slice and dice the basketball team and the hockey group in Philadelphia. Hard to imagine that there were 4 home games in Philadelphia, the hotbed, and the teams went 0 for 4.
I think they just ran out of steam, man. I mean, meanwhile, you got the Phils picking up steam.
They're picking
the
up
Phil Martelli Coaching Academy picking up steam.
Coaching academy for players now. Yeah, we have a few things going on, but we're going to keep going. Still under 500, the baseball team.
Chipping away, though.
Chipping away and having a chance now to step back with pro basketball in our town over, kind of step back and watch the college players preparing for the draft, the high school kids graduating, and then they go immediately to college to get ready to go. So congratulations to all graduates out there. Again, a thank you. The biggest thank you we can come up with for all the moms out there. And we're going to ask everybody, keep making a difference. The next several weeks, trying to put together things that will raise the bar again on Make a Difference. Any suggestions, any ideas, reach out.
I can tell you exactly how to do that too. Head on over to pnjmakeadifference.com. That is where you can get in touch with Phil to help him either on the court, off the court, in the workplace, or in the classroom. Tell him your story, and hopefully he can help you make a difference. We are at Make a Difference Pod on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, at Make a Diff Pod on X, Make a Difference with Phil Martelli on Facebook. If you're watching on YouTube, feel free to like and subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast, we'd really appreciate that 5-star rating. If you were looking for the Martelli Minute, it is at Phil_Martelli. Our thanks again to Matt Norlander, an incredible college basketball guest for us today. And I guess we'll just whittle it down to one here.
Well, that's all we have left now, but we're going to stick with it. Go Phils.
Go Phils.